with an induction cooktop, 12-volt hot water, a water pump, a UV lamp, all of my cameras to charge, interior lighting, and a whole bunch of other stuff I'm forgetting right now, this camper is going to have much higher electrical needs than any vehicle I've had in the past. So today, I'm installing flexible, lightweight solar panels from Renogy to try and get as much free energy as I possibly can. I had 200 watts on the roof of the Jeep I drove around Africa and 100 watts on the roof of the Jeep I drove around Australia. And on most days, my batteries were quite full again before I even started driving. I think it's a huge advantage. You take all of that load off the vehicle's alternator, and it also means if you don't drive anywhere for the day, you still have mostly full batteries anyway. These things are insanely light. This panel is 200 watts and it only weighs 10 pounds. It is really thin, so I'm not adding height to the Jeep, and obviously it's 200 watts, so it is a huge amount of power. I can't just fit one of these on the roof. I can't just fit two of these on the roof. I'm gonna mount 3 of these panels today on the roof of the camper. So let's get stuck into it and get as much free energy as we possibly can. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of The Road Chose Me. My name's Dan, and today, a job that I've been looking forward to for a very long time. As soon as I knew that 3 of these 200-watt flexible panels would fit, I started to get pretty excited about how much free solar energy I'll be able to get from the sun. In order to mount the panels, we have to get the roof off the Jeep, and I've reined in my brother to help out. He's helped build and work on all of my Expedition Jeeps over the years, all the way back to the little TJ I drove to Argentina, so it seems fitting that he's going to help and have input on this one as well. I couldn't have got it off without him. It's not heavy, but it's tall enough to be awkward. As much as we want to get on with mounting the solar panels, there's a few things I have to do first before I won't be able to access what will eventually be under the solar panels. I need to mount these rubber clips. They're going to help hold up the roof and the pusher bars that keep it up, as well as mount these footman loops with spreader plates that the bed platform will hang from when it's not in use. This will all make a lot more sense next video when I show you how the roof works. But I'm putting it here because I need to do these jobs before the solar panels are permanently mounted. So it's the usual story of clean drilling right through, putting an aluminum spreader plate on each side, through bolting, nylocks, and using our special adhesive with all of the prep and everything that goes into that. You've seen all of this before. If you haven't, check back through all the previous build videos in this series. This is how all the composite work gets done. So now I can lay out the solar panels and figure out their exact mounting location. I spent quite a bit of time here figuring out if I wanted them centered left to right and how much gap to have between them all. I had some pieces of wood lying around and I clamped those to the outside edges, which set the gap to the front and back of the roof, and then I got a very similar gap from the middle panel to the 2 edge panels. Now it's just a matter of putting tape and labeling everything and making sure that everything's perfectly square and centered and exactly where I want it, so that this is precisely how it'll look when I'm all done. So in terms of actually attaching the panels to the roof, I've got a couple of different options. And the first thing is, these panels come with these steel eyelets in the 4 corners and then 2 in the middle as well. And so this is obviously the strongest way to attach them, and I would like to use that. Probably the easiest thing to do is just punch a hole right through the roof, put a spreader plate top and bottom, have a stud sticking up, and then I can just put a nut on top of this. I could do that, but I'm trying to avoid through bolting the roof if I can. More chances for leakage, more weight with more spreader plates, all of that. I don't think this needs to be immensely strong, just to stop it lifting up in the wind and stuff like that. So what I've decided to do is I've made these little spreader plates and I've countersunk them really aggressively on the bottom. So I'll put a really short little countersunk bolt through that spreader plate, and then I'll bond the spreader plate down onto the roof. And then I'll have the thread sticking up. So if I line everything up exactly right, I can then put that stud through the eyelet and put a nice nylock nut on top. That'll be a really nice way to secure the 4 corners and in the middle as well. Everywhere else though, I really want to stop the panel from flapping at all and to try and just keep it firmly down onto the roof. And so what I've decided to use is 3M dual lock. And so if you've never heard of this, this is basically industrial strength Velcro. So 3M make this, they have a whole data sheet, and there's actually a whole bunch of different numbered versions of this, and depending on which combination you get, you can make the grip even stronger. And if you read the reviews online, people say this stuff is insanely strong. People are mounting amplifiers to walls and stuff like that. So my plan is to put a good amount of this underneath the panel. And I haven't decided yet if I'll do it in strips or if I'll just kind of put it all over the place. I'll see how much I've got and I'll try to figure it out. And then lastly, lots of people are asking if I'm going to put some sort of corrugated plastic or something like twin wall underneath the panel to give it a little bit of an air gap and some breathing. Well, it turns out this dual lock is going to wind up at about 6 millimeters high anyway. My little spacer plates add quite a bit. So there'll be a little bit of a gap under the panels anyway, and they're mounted to a perfectly white roof, which hopefully won't get too hot. So I think that will be sufficient. I'm not going to put a piece of twin wall underneath. Time will tell though, is this a mistake? Will these panels overheat in the sun and then produce not a whole lot of power? I think it'll be fine for where I'm going. If I was going back to Africa, maybe I'd think more about it, but I'm not going back to Africa with this Jeep. So this is my plan. Now it's just time to lay it all out, duplicate it, and do it all times 3 and get these things secured down. It would be nice to get some airflow under the panels when possible, so I've decided that I'm going to mount the dual lock in strips from the front of the roof to the back of the roof. That way when driving, maybe some wind will go under the panels and just help remove the hot air that would be trapped under there and keep them as cool as possible, which hopefully will keep them making power efficiently. So before I stick the dual lock down onto the roof, I'm going to do my usual trick of sanding it with fine sandpaper, then really scuffing the roof with coarse sandpaper, just to make it really textured and really grippy so the dual lock has a better chance of sticking and really staying stuck. So I'm going to do that to the entire roof where I need the strips to stick, and I'll do it to the back of the solar panels as well. The sticky stuff on the dual lock is extremely sticky. 3M know how to do adhesives, but doing this will just guarantee that it will stay stuck for a really long time. The shininess of the composite really doesn't want things to stick to it, so it's important you knock off that shine. Again, I've done a lot of this now with the composites. Check back through the previous videos if you want to see more details. I went back and forward a few times about whether I should stick everything to the roof and then put the panels on there, or do it the other way around, which is what I decided to do. And now both the panels and the roof are ready to be bonded together. So you can see those strips that I scuffed, they actually feel really textured when you run your hand over them, which is good. That means the sticky stuff on the back of the dual lock should stick on there. And I've cordoned off these squares because I need to activate, and that's where I need to put my special Cora Pop adhesive that will help stick down my aluminum little spacer thingers. There's the one there that I was using as a template. That's what's actually going to bond down onto there. So nothing else to do. I have to go get my brother, have to activate, and then let's stick these solar panels down. This is another one of those jobs that would have just been impossible by myself. And so we carefully laid the adhesive onto the roof, got the backing off the dual lock, and then threw the panels down in their exact right place. We were really careful, but we got them nice and square, pressed down everywhere evenly, and you can see the final result. I'm really happy with this. So now that the panels are stuck down, the next job is the wiring. And the most important part of the wiring is how the wires are going to go through the roof onto the inside. And this thing is called a cable gland. And I spent a long time trying to find one of these, and it turns out Renogy sell them. So I'll throw a link in the description. If you find yourself needing a cable gland, this is the way to do it, to get the wires through a roof and make sure that it's watertight. It has a rubber seal that goes underneath it, and then it has these rubber grommets that kind of go on the inside of it in here. And when I undo these screws, I can put that through, put the wires through, and then when you do it all up, the whole thing winds up watertight. So my trick now is I have to drill a decent sized hole in the roof here, big enough to get the wires through, and then I'm going to mount a spreader plate on the bottom like I always do, glue, bolts, get all that set, get all that happening, and then I can get on to actually wiring the panels together. This is another one of those jobs I procrastinated for a while. Drilling a 20mm hole in the roof is a little scary, and I really wanted to make sure I got it in the right place. There's some roof mechanism stuff underneath that dictated precisely where it could go, and I'll show you that in the future. Because I'm putting a spreader plate on the bottom with glue, I'm going to scuff the roof again, I'm going to use my activator and my special adhesive. Again, same as always. It was a bit of a fight to get the two 8-gauge solar wires through, but I did manage and I got it all sealed up really well. This thing is not going to leak. I'm really confident about that. So here I'm really starting to think about the wiring and the exact routing of each wire. How neat and tidy can I get it? Which one goes above which one? That kind of thing. So now it's time to actually wire up the panels, and I'm going to do two things here that are a bit controversial and I'm sure I'll get a lot of comments about. The first thing is that I'm not going to connect these in series. Series is usually preferred, where you just connect the positive to the negative to the positive of all of them, and then that goes down into the charge controller. Doing that combines the voltage of each panel. In this case, these panels are 20 volts each, so then I'd wind up with 60 volts at my charge controller and 10 amps. Keeping the amperage is much preferred because power loss is I squared R. So the less amperage you have, the less losses you're gonna have just physically from your cables and your joiners. So for a lot of reasons, series is preferred and most people recommend wiring them in series. The reason I'm not doing that though, is because the charge controller I've chosen, it has a maximum solar input voltage of 50 volts. And so as I said, the three of them added up is 60. Can't go that high, that's too much for the charge controller. And I could have chosen a different charge controller, then I'd have a separate one for solar and a separate one to charge off the alternator. Bigger, heavier, more stuff to wire up, more things to find space inside the Jeep. I want to keep it as simple as I can, so I'm going to wire them in parallel. What that means is I connect all of the negatives together and all of the positives together. What that does is it keeps the voltage the same. The charge controller will only see 20 volts as a maximum, which is good because that's below its 50 volt limit. But what it does is it adds together the current from each panel. Each panel is rated at 10 amps. So now I'm going to have 20 volts at 30 amps. And like I said, that means more power losses because power loss is I squared R. I may not get as optimal charging in this configuration. But it is what it is in the interest of keeping things smaller, lighter, and simpler. And to be quite honest, I think that 600 watts of solar is still an enormous amount, so I'm not too worried about it. So I said I was going to do two controversial things with the wiring, and you're just about to see me do the second one. There it goes. That's right, I just cut the connector off one of the solar panels. So the right way, or the normal way to do this, is to use those MC4 connectors that are designed for connecting solar panels together. And what you get is a thing called a branch connector. That way you can join all the negatives and all the positives together. No problem, you can just plug and play and have the wires go down inside. But those things are really bulky. They're quite fat, they take up a lot of space. And I really want to minimize the height of all of this and how much stuff is up on the roof that could possibly get snagged on a tree branch or something similar. So what I've decided to do is I'm cutting off all of the connectors and I'm going to make all the joins by soldering, or soldering as I would say in Australia. And so I've always enjoyed soldering electronics, so this is not daunting for me at all. And I think if I do a really high quality join and I put some heat shrink on there and then I'm going to tape it all down, I see no reason to think that this will provide a worse connection. Really, the only downside is that if I ever have to remove the panels or replace one of them for some reason, that will be a lot harder and I'm going to have to cut all of these joins and then at some point re-solder them again. Taping it all down with some super strong Gorilla Tape looks fantastic, and I think the upsides are worth it for the downsides. So there we go, solar panels installed. I am very happy with that. Obviously, it would be hard to get any more than 600 watts on this roof, given how close to the edges I am all around. And then how clean the wiring has come up. I'm really happy with this. Super low profile, so the chances of a tree branch catching on here are really slim. I thought about putting more tape here and like really aggressively taping all of this. I think I'm going to leave it for now, and I'll just see in the future. I'll have a good look at it after I've been driving at highway speeds and after it's been in high winds, and I may come back and add more tape to that. But for now, there's the outside of the roof complete. With the 3 solar panels, the wiring, and all the new mount brackets, the roof must be nearly 40 pounds heavier than it used to be, and I knew my brother and I wouldn't have a chance of getting it back up onto the Jeep. So I bribed all of my friends with coffee and muffins from the local coffee shop, and early one morning before work, they all came over, and with many hands we made light work, and it was quite easy to shimmy it up and back onto the roof of the Jeep. And I'm sure eagle-eyed viewers are going to see something there about some roof supports and something about a bed platform. I promise the details are coming. So we've just driven clear across the country. How are the panels holding up? So we sat on the freeway for quite a while at 70, even 80 miles an hour. We drove through torrential rain. You can see the bug carnage. We've done a lot of kilometers. We're getting close to the East Coast so we can ship this thing out. And here are the panels. You can see this is the leading edge of the front one. I think it hasn't even moved a fraction. All of the panels are exactly where I left them. I think evidence is that this is going to be plenty strong enough. There really is like no movement here at all. So you can see they seem to be very well stuck down. And obviously they're a bit dirty. It's been raining, we've been driving, they've been sitting outside. It's like 10 o'clock in the morning. The sun is not directly overhead right now. It's kind of well, it's 10 o'clock in the morning. But let's have a look how these things are performing. How much power do they actually put out? So here we are inside the Jeep. And for the purposes of our cross-country road trip, I basically just jerry-rigged the solar panels to the charge controller to the 100 amp hour lithium that I've been carrying around from Renogy. And I did that because it's jerry-rigged to the fridge. And I'm not going to show you my wiring because it's literally held together with zip ties and duct tape. The rest of the 12 volt system is something that I still have to work on. But anyway, safe to say the solar panels are connected to a battery right now. Let's bring up the DC Home app. I've got screen sharing turned on. And right away we can see the charge controller sees 431 watts from the solar panels, and 29 point out of that is going into the battery. And that's because the fridge is running. I can hear it right now. So the fridge is pulling some of that current out. It doesn't even get to go in the battery. But this is really interesting. You can watch in real time how the solar panels are doing. Obviously 431 watts is really nice. We can see we've got 17.2 volts and 25 amps coming out of the panels. And the battery was at 70%, 73%. It's because I've been unplugging the panels since yesterday to let the battery get down so I could show you how much charge is going in. But the really interesting part about this that I love, once you're in the charge controller, you can see what it's doing, but then you can come in here into history, and for any given month, for any given day, you can see the minimums and the maximums. So here we are in June, and we can see here that the maximum charging watts that have ever been recorded is 604 watts. Pretty nice out of 600 watts of solar panels. Obviously it's all fairly accurate. And we can see what our minimum battery voltage was on any given day, what our maximum was, what our maximum charging current was. But this is the one that interests me, maximum charging wattage. For every day of the month that the system's been together, you can see we peaked at 604. We had another day there, 473, 408. Today, 441 is the highest it's been, probably depending on the angle of the sun, depending on how clean the panels are, a few things like that. You can see our total charge amp hours, how many have gone into the battery, and watt hours as well. They're pretty low because the battery has been full nearly the entire time because it's just running one fridge. This is all going to change when I finish the whole 12 volt system and actually wire everything in. But for now, this is a great way just to monitor and see how the solar panels are doing. Again, sitting here, we're just putting in 430 watts into the battery and it's going to be fully charged in 53 minutes. That's pretty nice, just sitting here, not using anything up, charging the battery. So there you go. That is the full DIY install of Renogy flexible solar panels. And don't forget too, Renogy are celebrating their 14th anniversary right now. So they have some really big specials on. They have some giveaways. They have some competitions. There's a link in the description. Go over to their site. And if you use the code TheRoadChoseMe at checkout, you get 5% off everything in the entire store, 10% off the charge controller I'm using, as well as see what specials they've got going on. There's a lot of stuff on sale right now. I've been using Renogy gear for a lot of years. I wouldn't recommend it unless I'd been battle testing it. It's been really good for my needs. Yes, you could spend 4 times more money for a similar system, is it any better? I don't see how it could be. This stuff works great and it's way cheaper than some of the other brands that are out there. So if you've got any questions, do let me know down in the comments. I'm happy to help in any way that I can. As always, thanks to my Patreon supporters. They've been seeing this and getting all these details for a long time now. We just had a meetup back in Denver in Colorado. That was a lot of fun. So if you're interested in becoming a Patreon supporter, there are a lot of different perks you can get. Check the link in the description, head over there, see what it's all about. Have fun out there. Maybe I'll bump into you on the road. Thanks for watching. Tons more to come on the build that I need to show you. You might be able to see there's some canvas here behind me. There's a bed platform above my head. There's a ton of interior creature comforts. The water system is nearly finished. I need to finish off the 12-volt system. This thing goes in a container very soon to a new part of the world. So stick around, big adventures coming up. Thanks for watching.